Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Sacred She Soul Sessions. I am joined today by Sama Morningstar, and we're going to jump in and talk all about today womb wisdom and like what that even means, and so much great info about it. I can't wait for her to share it with us. So before we get into that, Sama, if you just want to tell everyone just a little bit more about who you are and what you're up to in life would be awesome.
Sure. Thank you for having me here with you, Jenna. And by the way, my name is Sama, like mama with an S. So.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize. I've been going Sama the whole time.
It's a common thing. People call me Sama or like Samantha or something like that, but it's more like mama, and that kind of rings true because I feel very connected with the Divine Mother teachings that are coming forth and reawakening. And that's a very strong foundation of the work that I do. And my sacred vocation, I call it really, because I've devoted my whole life to healing, personal transformation, and feminine empowerment. And so for me, from the very beginning, like going to college at age 17, I started studying women in spirituality, women in religion, psychology, women's studies. I was really searching from a very early age. There's got to be something different than the way that I was raised, and the pain in my early childhood of watching my mother be disempowered by the man in her life, as well as the social structures that were in place at that time. One of the biggest things that I tell all the time that has gotten me, that has motivated my journey with womb healing and womb awakening, is my experience in my mother's womb. So everyone has had that. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're a woman and you no longer have a womb because you had a hysterectomy at some point, you still have the experience of being in your mother's womb, where every cell in your body was formed. And so what happened during those first 9 months or so, and how your birth took place and how you were conceived, is the blueprint of our life. It's the blueprint of how we're embodied as a soul, as a spirit in this body. And we can do womb healing to help to sort of upgrade or heal any trauma in that blueprint that's holding us back. And so for me, that's been very important. And I keep spiraling back and revisiting that because my mom conceived me at 17. She was 17 years old. She didn't know when she started menstruating at the age of 10. She thought she was going to die. She was raised in a Catholic family. Nobody told her anything about her fertility.
Wow.
She thought she was going to die. She wore multiple pairs of underwear to school, trying to figure out at age 10. Can you imagine being a 10-year-old and starting to bleed?
How traumatic that must have been, just to not even know.
Not even knowing. And so she managed to get information. Her mother, my grandmother, noticed that she had these, bloody underwear in the laundry eventually, and talked to her about it, but it was all from that place of shame and secrecy, and we're not really supposed to talk about it. But she didn't tell her about what it meant that now she could have a baby and like that. She didn't tell her anything about her fertility. And so when she was 17 and starting to feel the urges of nature and spending time with a boyfriend, after they were together for 2 years, her mom didn't think, her dad didn't think to talk to her about what was obviously going on, right? And suddenly she starts to put things together. Like, I don't know how she got information, friends, girlfriends talking, whatever. And she went to her boyfriend and said, what if I get pregnant? And my biological father, who was already my biological father, they just didn't know it yet, said, oh, that would be your problem. So my mom immediately dumped him. So that was like my first experience of the relationship between men and women.
Wow.
Because the science is coming out for what we've always kind of known, but that we've had a different belief system for a long time culturally that says that the fetus, the baby inside of us, doesn't really have any feelings or doesn't have an experience, and the science is out now with high-tech, non-invasive measuring devices that, in fact, a developing fetus from the moment of conception on is experiencing a whole bunch of stuff, and everything that the mother is experiencing, that mass of developing cells that's turning into a fetus is getting a download. Yes. Oh, wow. It looks like Heather had a similar experience. Right, because there's shame about talking to dad about it, right? And mom not having the foresight to share with daughter, and there's not a cultural structure to support young women being initiated into womanhood and their fertility. And this is one of the biggest crimes that I feel is going on in our society today. And there's amazing studies that have been done. Tribal cultures that celebrate young girls' first menarche in an uplifting way and an empowering way are the most peaceful cultures, the most non-warlike, harmonious cultures. They're not out there fighting for war, fighting and warring and killing each other because they're celebrating life. It's the exact opposite, right?
Totally, yeah. Like rites of passage are huge, and they're not very common for us in the Western world.
Right. Well, we've, our Western culture, at least in the United States and in a lot of European places too, we could get all into that. The history of it, is based on killing off, literally murdering and doing genocide against any culture that had any kind of rites of passage like that. So basically that's what our whole social structure is built on. So yes, and now we're all starving for that. So right, Heather, we need those rituals. We need to reclaim that richness of celebration of the different passages in our lives. And we can, as women who didn't get that kind of initiation, we can do recapitulation ceremonies for ourselves, which are very powerful, something that I want to explore doing more with women, where we can celebrate our own first menarche and give ourselves the initiations now, even as older women. Doesn't matter what has happened with us throughout our lives, we can still go back to that moment in time and give ourselves what we missed out on. So anyway, that initial moment of my biological father saying, oh, that would be your problem, and my mom having just, an understandably upsetting reaction and saying, so much for you then, she was 17 years old. And then finding out she was pregnant and keeping it a secret from him and her mother, who she was afraid was going to force her to go to Mexico and get an illegal abortion.
Wow.
So my whole conception was bathed in these feelings of anxiety and shame. My whole gestation, she was hiding me, keeping me a secret for my survival. So those feelings, those emotions, when you have those serious emotions that you're in danger, that something you care about is in danger, You don't know how things are going to work out. You're frightened. You're in anxiety. You're feeling shameful. They produce chemicals in your body. And those chemicals are inside the amniotic fluid. So that's how I was formed.
Wow.
And that's true for everyone. And when you start to look back at what was going on while you were in your mother's womb, it starts to make sense, some of the challenging patterns that you face in your day-to-day life. So for me, some of the challenging patterns are, how do I relate with the masculine? I have a very strong impulse to reject men. Mm-hmm. My whole system shuts down as soon as intimacy starts to happen. Or it did. And I've had to do a lot of healing work, devote my life to healing work, really, to change that and to really find the most effective approaches to healing, because just talking about it doesn't cut it. You've got to change the chemical makeup of all of your cells, and you've got to switch certain DNA back on that got shut off because of your environment to recreate a different type of cell.
That's like a total light bulb moment too, to think about the fact, because I think a lot of the time we hear womb wisdom or womb healing, we really think about the now and the present. And I know for me, I was relating a lot more to my spiritual awakening journey of how can I further my personal and spiritual growth by tapping into that womb energy. We're not really thinking about the fact that it actually goes back all the way to the point of conception, of even just in that stage before you're even born.
And it goes even farther back than that, because the egg that made you was fully developed in your mother's ovary, or all the DNA was there. It wasn't a fully developed egg, but all the DNA that made you was in your mother's ovary while she was in your grandmother's womb. So everything that happened to your grandmother from the moment she conceived your mother, and for the entire gestation of your mother, and everything your mother experienced growing up as a young girl, influenced, and all through her life until she conceived you, and then when she conceived you, how she conceived you, and everything that happened was affecting your DNA.
That's some deep shit.
Okay. And it goes back farther than that, because the DNA that made your mother was in your grandmother when she was in your great-grandmother's womb. So the womb is this portal for ancestral healing.
Wow.
One of my sisters who was on, we were just on the same interview series that I put together. Her name is Erica. What's that?
Which was amazing, by the way, and we'll have to touch on that after. Don't let me forget, so we can share about that, because I really want some.
Great. Anyway, one of my friends in this interview series talks about finding your roots to get your wings, and so we want to have wings. We want this liberation, this ascension, this awakening, this spiritual awakening in the now. How can I grow into who I'm becoming, right? Well, in order to do that, we often have to attend to the roots. The tree can only grow as tall and as wide of branches as it has deep roots and wide roots in the ground. If it's too tall without the deep roots, it falls over, right? The first storm that comes along. And so the thing is, our wombs are a portal to ancestral healing. So as soon as I started really focusing in on this, and every time I've touched on it a little bit, I invariably get a call from my mom. Saying, oh, is something going on? And I say, okay, what's going on? Okay, yeah, that's very similar to what I'm working with. And we'll get the same kind of illnesses at the same time. We'll have the same relationship issues at the same time. we'll have the same revelations, the same breakthroughs, same types of breakthroughs at the same time. And my mom actually is a very central part of my womb awakening journey that I've really been deepening and broadening in my life, and bringing it into the world, coming out of hiding. You know, I've been hiding most of my life. I lived in an off the grid ashram up in Northern California for 10 years, from my mid 30s to my mid 40s, hiding, doing spiritual growth, you know, finding peace, drinking spring water, hiding from what was going on in the world and, you know, inside myself.
That is so powerful.
Yeah. So it is. And so it looks like Heather is talking about, yeah, so these intense experiences in our childhood, you know, and why do these addict mothers or bad moms, you know, like that, why are they that way? Because they weren't mothered.
Yeah, it's so much more deep-rooted than I think what a lot of the time we're led to believe until we start doing this shadow work and start digging a little bit deeper. I'm curious, too, with your clients and just with the knowledge that you have around wombs being the portal and all this ancestral wisdom, like where would you suggest that someone starts if this is all very new to them?
Well, one of the most powerful places to start is by simply placing your hands on your belly, on your womb, and you can find sort of the general area where your womb is by making, this is called the Yoni Mudra, okay? And you put your thumbs and your pointer fingers together, and then you put your thumbs on your navel and your pointer fingers on your pubic bone. And that makes sort of a frame, a window around your womb space and where that portal is for you. And so just taking some deep breaths and tuning in to your womb and noticing what kind of feelings, thoughts, images, memories you have right there. And just something so simple as taking 5 minutes to connect with your womb starts producing amazing transformations immediately. That's the beautiful thing about the womb. You put a tiny seed into it, and it creates a whole new something, right?
Yeah, that's a great starting point. And super simple too, that even someone who's really, really busy and this is new to them, that's not overwhelming. That's something easy that anyone can fit into their day.
Yeah. And, you know, I actually started out with similar things, but I did it with artwork. That's another thing, as I drew pictures of my womb and my heart and how they were connected. And I just got out all my reds and pinks and you know, and just drew pictures after pictures. And, you know, just paying attention to our menstrual cycles, if we still have them. A lot of women starting to pay attention to the cycles of the moon, you know, and tracking our menstrual cycles with the cycles of the moon, you know, having it on the calendar, things like that. And so those are all, like, you know, wonderful practices to grow into. But I feel that this womb listening, where you just connect with your womb, put your hands on your belly and take a moment, it really gives us a direct connection to our portal directly to spirit. Because one thing I always talk about is how our wombs are, what does the womb do when a baby is made inside the womb? It brings a spirit into physical form and creates a physical form to receive a spirit. So the womb is the direct portal for spirit to come through us and be created into physical form. So people talk about manifesting. I talk about materializing.
That's crazy when you put it that way and really start to think about it as literally a portal.
It's a portal. And so the spirit comes through us and gets translated into physical form. And it's a very powerful, energetic thing that happens, and it affects everyone around us. So women not only can create babies, but we can create all kinds of artwork, businesses, projects, all that. But we can also create things through nourishing other people.
Mm-hmm.
So how many times have you heard the saying that behind every great man is a great woman? Why was he so successful? Because he had this woman who was using the energy of her womb, who was nourishing him with that spirit portal of materialization.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of people as well talking about just their experience with their mothers. Like Michaela said, my mother's very anxious and insecure internally. I can feel that from her. And I think a lot of people can, like how you said with these synchronicities with your mom and how often a lot of the times you're feeling each other's feelings or having similar experiences. So how does that play a role in this? And especially if it's more on the negative side and people are really feeling into negative things of maybe ancestral, mothers and grandmothers. Do you think in this healing process that they can start to maybe release some of that as well and not take on maybe other energies of people?
Releasing, not taking on, and having boundaries are some of the first steps, developing healthy differentiation, recognizing, oh, I'm feeling this way again. Is this really mine, or is this something of my mother's that I started to take on and carry at a very early age because I was trying to help her to feel better? Right? Those are some of the first steps. And it can very quickly turn into the fact that we right now are receiving powerful spiritual inspiration that's awakening our healing capacities. So the whole system of the womb portal between generations ideally is designed to pass from the older generations down to the younger generations all the wisdom. But because of the violence of patriarchy against feminine wisdom, what we're having to do now is use that portal in reverse. So as we have the freedom and the support of our current lifestyle, and the awakening men in our lives and the awakening sisterhood in our lives, and this wisdom is re-emerging, resurrecting, it's our job to fill ourselves up with that and then send it back through our lineage.
Absolutely.
So that's a very powerful process. And I've been doing that with my mother. It's going back to my grandmother, and even further. I'm actually right now, I bought my tickets this morning. I'm taking a trip to the birthplace of my great grandmother in Italy this summer for this very purpose, to go and be with her ancestral energies. And then next year, my plan is to go to Brazil, where my great great grandmother was born, and to visit the sites of where these things happened for her. So it goes back through the generations and forwards. So as we also are awakening and doing this healing for ourselves, then that goes forward through the generations as well.
That's going to be a very powerful experience and trips for you to go and take.
Yes, it's been a powerful process to listen to that call and really feel that and watch how it arranges itself. It was interesting, the whole process of buying the airplane ticket. It's like there were a bunch of different things, variables that were circulating around and that I didn't know the answers to. And I kept finding, kind of the right tickets, but there would be something off about it. Like it wasn't quite the right dates. It wasn't quite the right kind of flight. I didn't like this or that. And then finally, when all of these balls floating in the air settled themselves down, I found the perfect tickets.
Of course.
And I bought them today,
Hey.
I know. So it's pretty amazing how that works, because when we tap into, when we connect with the womb power, I call it. Now I know you mentioned that somebody had asked a question, what if I've had a hysterectomy? Does this relate to me? It absolutely relates, because first of all, you were conceived and gestated in your mother's womb, and your grandmother's womb had blah, 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 all the things we've already talked about. And you still have an energetic womb. You still have that spirit portal from spirit into the material world. You might not be able to actually make a baby, not having an actual physical uterus, but you still have a spiritual and energetic womb. And the other part of that is, if it was removed for a particular health reason or for a traumatic birth, what was not removed were the reasons why you had that traumatic birth, or the reasons why you were having those health issues. So a lot of women that have had to have hysterectomies because their uterus was very sick, what they find is that some other part of them becomes sick after the hysterectomy. Or suddenly they have chronic back pain, or suddenly they have kidney issues, or suddenly they have, so Michaela is saying she did a lot of energy healing. Was that after something like that, or around, I don't remember what Michaela was saying before.
Yeah, I know she was talking about taking on her mother's energy.
Yes, and that's very much the case when we have this connection with our ancestors, and there's a subtle shift that we can do. And we can go from taking it on as a burden, as something that we've taken on as our own and taking it away from them, to having healthy differentiation and healthy boundaries and saying, this is not mine, this is yours, this is my portion of these feelings, and these are her portion of these feelings. And once we have that differentiation, we practice that for a while, and there's processes that I guide my clients through, because sometimes that's not so easy. And I have to return to that practice again and again, because it's like, whoa, this is way too big for my current circumstances. Is this belong to some of this to someone else? Am I carrying, and I, again and again, I return to that. And then as we find what's really ours and we work with that, then we can give that process back. So instead of taking it into us and carrying it ourselves, we give their stuff back to them, work on our own stuff in a way that works, right? So that we feel lighter from our own stuff even, and then share that process with them. So it's two different ways of helping our beloved mothers and grandmothers and our ancestors. And it goes back through the masculine side of the lineage as well. And because men have, even though they don't have a uterus, they have the other part of this whole creative apparatus, right? And so
that's what I was going to ask, is kind of, how do the men fit into this? I mean, I know this is a women's group and a women's focus, but is it the same sort of thing then with men in their own way?
Yeah, because men have their own, it has a different energetic. And just to say to Heather, yes, healing the trauma energetically in that space, and then taking it even a step further and activating the energetic powers of the womb, because we get kind of stuck in the sense that the womb needs all this healing because it's been so traumatized. But the truth of the matter is, the womb has a whole bunch of healing to give us, to be the source of. And as soon as we activate that, then it just becomes easier and easier for the womb to heal itself. It's one of the, most self-healing parts of the body. And it's just been so severely traumatized. So yes, the masculine, how the masculine comes into play is, well, what works for the men is to connect with, we call it the hara. And women have a hara too. If you've ever studied, Aikido or Tai Chi, they talk about moving from your hara, and that's basically the spiritual portal in the pelvis.
Right.
In Sanskrit, it's called the Purusha, your connection to your individuated God self. Okay, that's the way of translating the Purusha. So every spiritual tradition has a name for this portal of where we can connect directly with spirit, our individual, unique, umbilical cord to spirit, right?
Yeah.
And so men have that too. Men were conceived, gestated, and born from a womb. Now, the challenge with men is that in our patriarchal culture, they were severely taught and enforced, men are, to separate themselves from the feminine
Mm-hmm.
and suppress femininity in themselves even more severely than women, because
Absolutely, yeah.
it is violently suppressed. And one of my teachers talks about how the people who suffer the most from patriarchy are men.
Yeah, I would 110% agree with that.
And so the way that comes into play is that thankfully, as women, we have this capacity to nurture and nourish others and help them grow and connect into their power. And now there's healthy ways of doing that and not so healthy ways of doing that. Like the patriarchal way of doing it is for the woman to completely sacrifice herself and become burnt out because she's not nourishing herself and she's just giving all of her energy away to her husband and her children. The healthy way of doing that is to make sure that our wombs and our connection with the divine is fully nourished and fully cared for, and that we are filling our cup full to overflowing, and then being able to nourish those in our lives, including the men in our lives and the children and all the ancestors and the descendants and
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. It feels to me like there's a lot of undoing social conditioning and beliefs that we've been taught to have for a long time, as well as exploring the more ancestral wisdom side of it, like going back into the deeper things, going back to our parents and grandparents and their parents and the lineage as well.
Indeed. In fact, one of my teachers recently was also talking about, because I'm in these circles where we're all doing this womb healing work together, and sometimes it can be really overwhelming because we're dealing with generations upon generations of horrible violence against the feminine. I mean, atrocity upon atrocity, and it's still going on. And people, one thing that happens is that as you start to heal your own individual pain around what happened for you in your life, then it opens the portal to then be able to support the collective wounding around that, so then you start to feel, your ancestors and everyone in their village and, everyone in your town now, and, it can become, and the whole world, and it can become overwhelming. So one thing that one of my teachers talks about is calling upon the wisdom from ancestors, the ancestor, and also descendants have become very important to me, who were before this wounding happened, who were fully empowered in their femininity, in their wombs, or womb awakened, as we like to say. And so we can reach back through that spiritual umbilical cord to the ancestor who was fully empowered in their feminine power, and ask for support from there. And that's some powerful stuff. I mean, there's a reason why the suppression of femininity.
This has given, I think, all of us some really, really valuable stuff to think about, both on the what's going on in the now, and then what kind of reflections can we do about things that have gone on and how it's affected us as individuals, but also what can we start doing to take some action around this and do some healing for ourselves as well as those in our life and for our world as well. And both the feminine and the masculine. It's also interconnected.
It is.
I know that you have a free gift for us. So before we wrap up and we share where everyone can stay in touch, can you tell us more about that? Because I'm super excited.
Yeah, well, when you asked me earlier, what's the simple thing for people to get started, and I talked about this, just connecting and listening to your womb, and men can do this too, and just sort of translate womb not as uterus, but as energetic portal connection with the great mother, divine mother, and that men have that as well. And even if you've had a hysterectomy, just that portal that's still there and active in you. And so I created a womb listening meditation in which I guide you to connect there more deeply. And I always like having guided meditations, because if I'm just trying to do it myself, after a minute or so, I'm thinking about my laundry list and like that.
Totally. Yeah.
So having a guided meditation, I often do that for myself, record something that I need to hear and need to focus on, and listen to that in my own voice. And so that in that meditation, you'll be guided to, make that connection with your womb space and breathe with it, and then ask some questions about what's needed, connecting with your guides, your spirit guides and all of that, and then asking for what's needed to be attended to in your healing, so you can get some very specific answers to very specific questions about.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so our womb then becomes our connection to spirit guidance, our individual inner guidance.
Okay. Wow, I can't wait for myself, number one, to experience this, but also everyone in the community as well. So we can link that up then afterwards for everybody to check out.
Yeah, it's not, you can sign up for that on my website, and I'll give the link, samamorningstar.com. It's very easy. And,
perfect. Yeah, I'll link that up for everyone too if they don't know the spelling or anything, then they can find it. And where is it best for people to connect with you? Like, do you prefer Facebook? Do you like your website or email?
Any of the above. Facebook is easy because we can do private messaging. If you wanted to ask any more questions, of course you can. I'm here in the group, so you can, tag me in the comments, and we can connect. And if it's something more private, you can feel free to private message me as well.
Yes, and you have an amazing Facebook community as well, so we can link that up. Are part of that community, but I definitely appreciate you being a part of our community as well, and just contributing to these wisdom offerings and sharing the knowledge amongst everyone, because I can see with all the hearts flying up on this live and all the comments that there's been a lot of relevant value given today for people, of things to think about and explore a little bit more on.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity, and so grateful that you came and talked to my community and brought your folks for the Feminine Creative Power speaker series, interview series that you wanted me to remind you to talk about.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, ladies, if you're watching, I'll link that up as well, because I was a speaker on that, and we had an amazing conversation, but also there was so many, and I've been able to catch quite a few of them, and so many amazing women talking on different topics, all relating back to divine feminine, creative energy, and how they're connected, and just so many different topics. So we'll link that up as well, because those are worth getting in and catching the videos in that series as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you everyone that tuned in. We had quite a few people engaging with us and asking really great questions. And if you're catching this on the replay, like she said, she's in our group, so feel free to ask a question, and one of us will get back to you on that if you want to post it in the comments or just reach out. And yeah, this was amazing.
All right. Thank you, Jenna. So lovely.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have an awesome night, everyone.
All right.